Hey guys, I just got a package in the mail. It looks like some old audio player or something. I don't know what this is. A channel master. Okay, let me press play.
Ryan,
Oh,
you have been invited to join the Possible Mission Force, or the PMS.
okay.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to watch all of the Mission Impossible movies and rank them.
Watch all the Mission Impossible movies and rank them. I mean, that's not too bad. I can surely do
This
that.
message will self-destruct in
I
5
mean, it'll take some
seconds.
time, I guess,
5,
but I think I
4,
can probably do
3,
that. That
2,
seems pretty doable.
1.
Hello, everybody. I have chosen to accept my mission, so I'm gonna talk about and rank all of the Mission Impossible movies. Because there's a new one coming out soon. Final Reckoning, the last Mission Impossible movie. I mean, it might be, but with Tom Cruise, I feel like it might be the last one. But anyway, there are 7 Mission Impossible movies. Let's begin with Mission Impossible from 1996.
Good morning, Mr. Phelps. This is your mission should you choose to accept it.
Really, the first thing I have to say about this movie is watching it back is kinda silly because of how lackluster the mission actually feels. Like, I get it, there are thousands of lives at risk, but compared to the later movies where, nuclear strikes and fucking AI disaster is at risk, this feels a little bit underwhelming. And that's not this movie's fault that later movies went so big. I'm just saying it's a little bit funny to me. And I guess to start, I feel like I would like to say that I like this movie and that it is a good movie. However, I ultimately feel like Mission Impossible, the first film, ends up just being kind of an average, action, kind of spy type of movie. It's still good, but I don't think it's like the greatest thing ever made. Ultimately, at this point in the franchise, I don't think Ethan Hunt is ever really that interesting of a character. To be fair, Ethan Hunt is never that interesting of a character. But in this movie, he definitely feels like he hasn't quite gained the Ethan Hunt vibes and personality traits of the Ethan Hunt that we grow to know. And in this movie, he feels a little bit generic. And it's kind of interesting to see Ethan in this movie because he's definitely like a bit of a younger, smug version of Ethan Hunt. I mean, younger because Tom Cruise is like in his 30s in this one. He's like 61 by the time the first Reckoning, Dead Reckoning, whatever comes out. So, we'll take it for sure. But it is like weird seeing him be kind of like an arrogant guy that is arrogant because he just is. In the later movies, is confident in himself because he knows he is a very skilled person. There isn't a whole lot for him to care about in this movie. He doesn't have his crew yet, right? Like, he doesn't have his friends to hang on. For those that don't know the plot of this movie, it opens with him, Ethan, and a crew of like maybe 5 other people trying to capture a guy who is stealing the knock list, which is a list of operatives undercover that have their undercover name and their real name. So if that got out, it would be bad for everyone. It's kind of shocking watching this back because the movie opens with them failing the mission in that everyone dies. Ethan lives, and that's about he's pretty much the only one that does. Technically, 2 people do survive. So yeah, it's kind of weird because you can tell that he has people that he cares about, but then they all die. He has good, decent banter with some of these people. Not really the women. They're just kind of there. then they die and you're like, oh, whoa, I was not expecting you to kill off all of these people that you were setting up to be like main characters. It's a shocking way to start the movie. I think it's a fun way to start the movie, but ultimately I don't know that I really feel how much this affects Ethan. Not to rag on Ethan too much in this movie, but I do like a lot of the side characters a little bit more than him. And when I say a lot of the side characters, I mean like a few, because there are also a lot of characters that do nothing. The women, for example, Henry Czerny as Kittredge. Kittredge is in charge of the CIA, so he's also in charge of the IMF, or like in charge of overseeing the IMF at this point. I really like Kittredge. He's a fun character, and I quite enjoy that he comes back in Dead Reckoning, so it was really fun to see him come back. He's this guy that truly believes that Ethan Hunt is a mole and that he is a bad person. So Ethan Hunt gets disavowed. Wow, shocker, I can't believe that. Kittredge ends up being kind of an antagonist. I mean, he's an antagonist to Ethan, but he doesn't play that big of a role in the larger scheme of things. Of course, this movie is also introduces, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Ving Rhames as Luther. Luther, my boy, my guy, my absolute unit. He's probably my favorite character out of the franchise. Shockingly, he is in every single movie. Luther and Ethan Hunt are the only two characters in every Mission Impossible movie. But ultimately, Luther is just kind of like a good guy that I feel like I would enjoy just hanging out with. So immediately I'm attached to him. And I'm like, yeah, I like this guy. He kind of has more personality than this Ethan Hunt fella. There's also a character named Max, and she is the person who is trying to purchase the knock list, so she is a bad guy. She's in the movie very little, but when she is on screen, she's very fun to watch, and I like her character a lot. There's also a French dude named Franz, who I like quite a bit as well. Franz and Luther end up being the IMF, well, they're both disavowed, but they end up helping Ethan in his task after he also gets disavowed. And here's the spoiler, the biggest spoiler talk of the movie. So Jim Phelps is played by, what's his name? Jon Voight. He is basically Ethan's mentor. He's the one that taught Ethan a lot of what he knows. He ends up dying in the beginning of the movie, but the twist is that he actually survived. He staged the whole thing, and he was planning on framing Ethan as the mole, which also just happened to kill all of the other members of the team. So, not a good guy. But Jon Voight as Jim Phelps is like fine. Of the antagonists in the Mission Impossible franchise, he's solid. You know, like some of them are really nothing. But Jim Phelps is at least interesting because he has that like deep connection with Ethan Hunt, so I like that about him. And then Jim Phelps is married to a girl named Claire, and Claire is much younger than he is, which is kind of a plot point. Basically, Claire was also on that mission, and she survived. Again, twist is because she's actually working with Jim. Claire has this weird romantic relationship with Ethan in this movie. In the movie, you don't really get to understand it. Like, she is married to Jim. Jim dies. If you don't know that Jim is the bad guy, you're like, so why is Claire hitting on Ethan and Ethan hitting on her? Didn't your husband just die? You understand where it comes from eventually, but I don't know, it's just like this weird thing where these movies tend to make women just nothing characters, and they are there to be the interest of the man, or Ethan Hunt in this case. Ultimately, I just find Jim Phelps and Claire Phelps to be like, you know, they're decent. Now we gotta talk about the action sequences, because that's what these movies are known for. I like this movie because it incorporates some decent spy stuff. Some of the later movies don't have a balance and they don't like have any spy stuff. And I think ultimately the conclusion I've come to after watching all of them is that these Mission Impossible movies need to have like a decent spy plot or like spy gadgetry, just spy inspired stuff going on. And then if they don't have that and it's just pure action, it's not as interesting to me. It adds an extra level of fun to these films. At one point, Ethan goes to a diner to meet with Kittredge, and it's pretty short scene, but it's a good scene. This is where Ethan finds out that Kittredge thinks he's a mole. Ethan blows up like the front glass of the diner and escapes. So that's a pretty fun little tiny sequence. And then like the main one of the movie is the heist at Langley where CIA headquarters is. It's a fun set piece and it's really nice seeing like this goofy stereotypical spy shit. He's like about to sweat and a drop of sweat falls and he goes to catch it with his hand because the floor is like supremely extra weight sensitive and would send off the alarms if it fell. It's fun just seeing this all happen. I like Ethan having to descend into the place and he's on like ropes and trying to access the computer and whatnot. The movie's not afraid to actually be silent here, like not fully silent, because that is a thing that Ethan has to do. If a noise level reaches above a certain level, the alarms go off. So he has to be quiet. And in turn, the movie kind of puts you in that place, in that tension by like leaving it to be mostly quiet and silent. So you're kind of there with them like, I can't make any noise either. And then there's the final action piece is the train. This one feels really out of place in connection to the other movies because it feels the most impossible. You know, the thing with these movies is that Tom Cruise actually does the stunts. And so I'm sure that he does something for real, but most of this looks like a James Bond action set piece that kind of doesn't look great, like overreaching a little bit too much on like what should be possible. Ethan and Jim Phelps are on this train and they're going through a tunnel and Jim is trying to escape. There's a helicopter that ends up getting stuck to the train by like a cable and gets dragged like through the tunnel connected to the train. And it's just like really weird and just crazy and absurd. And you can tell like all of it is like green screen and it doesn't look that great. In connection to later movies, this is probably one of the worst action set pieces. It feels unbelievable when you're watching it. And you need a level of unbelievable because you need Ethan to perform these impossible feats. But like in later movies, it's stuff that you actually feel could happen. In this one, you watch and you go, oh, I don't actually buy it. It doesn't feel as good to watch. Also, hi, this is Bonus Ryan, because Bonus Ryan has some things to tell with you. Sorry, I can't speak English. So I actually decided that for this video, I wanted to read the Mission Impossible book, which is up here. It was based off of the screenplay, right? The screenplay was basically just adapted into a book. It's basically the first movie, almost exactly, from my memory. I think all of the dialogue is the exact same. It's just everything in between that gets maybe some more details or whatever. There are some interesting things to come from this book. For one, I like that you get to see into the minds of characters. It gives more depth to the Claire and Ethan relationship, and it actually makes sense here. It also lore drops. Ethan was a nationally ranked gymnast and had a good education. Ethan has a photographic memory. Nothing hints at Ethan's past being like bad or criminal. Like he went directly into CIA training. So I'm curious to see like what the plot between him and Gabriel, Dead Reckoning, is hinting at, because it hints that Ethan wasn't so good before he was recruited by the IMF. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, because the book is clearly different. The book is like surprisingly anti-capitalist and anti-wealthy people, so I kind of like that. It's fun. I just want to lay some respect on my boy Luther, because Luther is fucking incredible. So the book describes Luther as being a literal genius. It says that he won a science fair for building a computer from scratch in 6th grade. And let me explain to you why this is crazy. That means that Luther built a computer from scratch in 6th grade, which would be around 1973. Assuming that he's 35, the book describes him as mid-30s, and I believe in the movie he is 36, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt and made him 35. The book and the movie take place in 1996. You know, doing math means in 6th grade, if he's 12 and not 11, it would have been 1973. The first personal computer was developed in 1974, a year later than Luther built one from scratch with stray parts for a 6th grade science fair. Holy shit, Luther, you're actually a genius. You're legendary status, my guy. Also, he was disavowed for trying to create an override for American nuclear launch codes. So that's cool. The book explains that Ethan knows Luther, had worked with him before, and that Claire worked with Franz Krieger, the French dude from before. That explains why Franz ends up being bad a little bit better than the movie does, because Claire recruited him, because Claire was also bad, so it makes sense. In the book, the CIA heist is more complex. They have to like climb through ducts and vents for a lot longer, and Ethan uses a cold tube to regulate the temperature in the room, which basically offsets his body temperature, which is not something that they do in the movie. Basically the temperature just keeps rising and he has to get out of there before it reaches a certain level. Also, it explains that weird moment in the movie where there's a rat in the vents randomly, which doesn't make sense, by the way. And Franz, while holding Ethan up, is like trying to take care of the rat. Apparently, Franz is allergic to rat fur. And so it made him need to sneeze. Like, again, it gives Ethan more personality than the movies. Ethan loves London and museums and history in general. He likes to spend leisure time in London and just watch people. It's kind of cute. I love it. I learned that the train tunnel is actually a chunnel and it goes below the sea. In the movie, that wasn't really obvious to me because I'm not from England, but there's that fun fact for you if you don't know that. And then last point is the author of this book wrote the High School Musical movies. He wrote the screenplay for High School Musical, and then he adapted the Mission Impossible screenplay into this book. I don't know. Honestly, I thought the book was pretty good. Weirdly, I actually kind of liked it more than the movie because it gives more depth to some of the characters and some of the actions, so I like that about it. So if you're interested in reading the book, I low-key recommend it. This right here, thing I have behind me, is the Mission Impossible comic. This is one of the issues that was recalled by Tom Cruise because in a couple of the panels, he said that Ethan Hunt looked a little too feminine. All right, sorry for interrupting. You can move on. Yeah, okay. So yeah, ultimately, I thought that Mission Impossible was a fine movie. I enjoy watching it. I think it's a good movie. Other than that, I am going to leave all of my rankings for the very end, so not to spoil anything too much, but I do think the movies in general get better from here on out. So it's time for the next movie.
You know?
No, should I?
This is not mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. It's Mission Impossible.
Okay, Mission Impossible 2 from what year? 2000. So this is the movie where Ethan has long hair and he smiles too much and he's creepy looking. A spoiler alert, I don't think this movie is very good. I think Mission Impossible 2 is kind of a failure in the franchise. And I said this with the stunt piece from last time, But I feel like Mission Impossible 2, I don't know, it feels more like a James Bond movie than it does a Mission Impossible movie. I'm not saying James Bond movies are bad. I quite enjoy the James Bond movies. I think it's also a very good franchise. However, when I go in watching a Mission Impossible movie and it comes out feeling like a James Bond movie, something about it doesn't feel good. Ultimately, the thing I'll say about this movie, like as a whole, is that it's just kind of boring. It's okay. It's not terrible, but it is underwhelming and boring. In terms of like Bond-isms, this one introduces a woman that the male spy falls for immediately, and somehow in this moment they basically determine that they're lifelong lovers and that they have deep immediate feelings for each other, and then the woman becomes the damsel in distress that has to be saved. It's just that kind of movie. You've heard that plot a million times before, and that is Mission Impossible 2 at its core. Again, talking about characters, I feel like this movie has like exactly 3 that have personality, and once again, Ethan Hunt is not one of them. Ambrose is one of them. Ambrose is the villain. Luther, of course, we love Luther. And there's an Australian guy. He's kind of fun, I guess, but also his personality could just be that he's Australian. Also, like, not to get political or anything, but this movie has Anthony Hopkins taking over the Kittredge role, basically, and you fucking failed to make Anthony Hopkins a good character. I keep thinking to my head, like, you got fucking Anthony Hopkins, and you couldn't make that interesting? So the attractive woman, her name is Naya. She doesn't really offer much to the movie. She's basically just a plot device, not much of a character. The whole thing is she is a thief. Like, that is her thing. She's not a spy. She's not an agent. She's just a thief. And they could have really used that, like they do in later movies. But in place, she just kind of does nothing. Like, I think genuinely in this movie, she does like one pickpocket. And that's like the extent of kind of what she has to do. And also, I think it's funny because this movie basically tells you directly to your face that Naya is here specifically for the reason to be the hot woman that guy want to have sex with. The Ethan and Anthony Hopkins scene is pretty much exactly that. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me how you feel about this character, so I should feel the same. There's a secondary villain who's basically like a little cuck boy. His name is Hugh Stamp, and I like him because he's kind of just like a little sub the whole time. He just like you know, he's a little subordinate gay boy. And I think it's kind of cute, if not, you know, a little worrying, but he's a little cute, I guess. I also kept thinking they were calling him Stump because at some point the main villain like cuts off part of his finger, so I thought he was calling him Stump, and that made me laugh out loud. But then it wasn't true, and I was a little disappointed because I thought this villain was just like calling him Stump. I think Ambrose as a villain is pretty good. I genuinely, like, he's a guy that I actually hated. Ambrose is at least like a genuinely terrible dude. So like, you're like, no, I want Ethan to kick his ass. And one of the interesting aspects of Ambrose is that he kind of really understands Ethan. I think he was also like an IMF member at some point or something. He has like portrayed Ethan Hunt in the past, like, you know how they do like the mask thing and they portray a guy. Ambrose has played Ethan before. I don't really know why he would need to do that, but he has done that. He kind of has to understand Ethan, so I like that about him because it gives a little more complexity to it. The plot is pretty meandering and generic. Most of the characters are bland. And the action itself is also just kind of like fine. The movie kind of opens with Ethan being on vacation and he's free climbing a mountain, basically just to show you that Tom Cruise can do that. They bring him being able to climb back at the end of the movie, but it's like a tiny little baby little cliff face. I've seen him climb a big old mountain and do some crazy stuff, and then the climax is going to be him climbing like a tiny little baby ledge. Also, the stakes of this one is there's a virus. So Ethan has to break into a lab to destroy the virus. It's really him just doing the same stunt as the previous movie, like hanging from a rope and whatever, except it's slightly larger. And then he has to break into a secret lair, which I don't actually know what this place is or why it's in this movie. It doesn't really make sense other than to just have a cool looking set piece. I don't understand why or how Ambrose has this lair. And when it showed up, I was just kind of like, why are we here? There's some good, like, little fighting moments, but it's mostly generic. At some point, like, Ethan disguises as Hugh Stamp, and he, in turn, makes Hugh Stamp look like him, but he, like, duct tape his mouth or something. So when Ambrose finds them, he shoots Ethan, but it's actually Hugh Stamp, and then Ethan is able to get away with the cure to the virus or whatever it is that he has. But I like it because, you know, it's clever and it brings back some of that fun spy stuff. But then finally, like, we have a big old, like, motorcycle chase. Again, trying to show off that Tom Cruise knows how to ride a motorcycle. And believe it or not, he does. It's pretty good. There's some cool stunts. There's like a bridge explosion that he drives through that's pretty cool looking. And then like Ambrose and Ethan do like this weird thing where they're going in the air like this on their motorcycles, and they decide to jump off their motorcycles to like hug in midair and make out and be anyway, they hug midair and then they fight like on a little beach type of cliff face type of area. I don't know. It's kind of silly because Ethan mostly just does weird over the top kicks. It looks kind of fun, I guess, but it doesn't look practical. He does win though, because duh. And then Tom Cruise saves Naya, and then he goes on vacation with her. I don't have much else to say about this movie. Next movie.
I'm gonna hurt her, and then I'm gonna kill you right in front of her.
What are you not telling me?
Mission Impossible 3 from 2006. Here we go. So the movie opens by killing Ethan's wife. Ethan has a wife now. And no, it's not Naya from the previous movie. It's a different woman. I don't know. Ultimately, I think that Mission Impossible 3 is kind of where the franchise starts to gain the Mission Impossible vibes. Like, it starts to understand what it is as a franchise. There's also a lot of information that just kind of gets thrown at you. At some point, Ethan's mom died off screen. When this happened, I was like, wait, what? So in the first movie, the way that Kittredge gets to Ethan is by arresting his mother. And apparently, at some point, Ethan's mom died. It's one of those things where I'm just kind of confused by, because I'm like, Ethan very much cares about his mother. We know that. We saw him care about it before. So it just kind of felt weird. And they basically were like, no, we don't really want you to think about that anymore. So that, wait, don't worry about it. Don't worry. We'll have new people for him to like worry and fret over. Okay. All right. Thank you. No questions. So Ethan has quit field work. He's no longer an agent that works in the field. He's like training people. And like, that's fine. But I don't know. It just feels like sudden, especially because once again, it's a decision that's like happens off screen, and you're like, oh, well, what made you decide to do this? And also, this is the movie where the franchise starts the whole thing of not bringing back a character and just never talking about it ever again. And you're like, well, what happened? What happened to that guy? Naya is literally not mentioned a single time in this movie. And I'm like, she was like the love interest, and now she's not here. And like, I get that she didn't return because the actress didn't want to, but like, at least mention the character. At least mention that they broke up or that it didn't work out. Or maybe that's the reason why Ethan quit field work, is because he realized he wouldn't be able to have like a real relationship with anyone. I don't know, do like literally anything. Ethan's new wife is Julia. Oh right, they get married later in the movie, but they are engaged at the beginning. Aside from like all this weird like continuity plot stuff that just kind of gets thrown in your face, I do think that the plot is pretty good. Julia gets taken, and that's not exactly an original idea, but I do like it because they take her like halfway through the movie. They do it in a fun, interesting way a little bit. The first half of the movie is basically a thrilling, fun sequence of rescuing some blonde girl that Ethan trained, and then they break into the fucking Vatican. They kidnap Davian, who is the villain. They get ambushed on a bridge and whatever. Like I said, the first half of this movie is just really fun action and spy stuff. And the bad guy in this movie is Davian, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I think he's an absolutely great villain. I think he might be one of the best in the franchise. He's a guy that you just find genuinely intimidating. He's kind of just like a matter-of-fact dude that just says scary, ominous shit at you, and you're like, wait, what? And he has like a confidence about him, so when he says something, you just believe him. Ethan has a bit of an expanded crew in this one. Luther's still here. Fuck yeah. Benji is introduced in this one. Fuck yeah. And we get Zen and Declan, who are both like decent additions. I appreciate that these two have more personality than some of the other members that ultimately don't have anything come of them. And we get another like head of the IMF or something or whatever, and now it's Brassel, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne. Like, we got Kittredge, and then we got Anthony Hopkins, now we got Lawrence Fishburne, and I'm just like, bro, there's like very little continuity here. Holy shit. But I mean, it's Lawrence Fishburne, so he does a great job. What can you expect? Brassel ends up being like a fun red herring character. Ethan's captured for like maybe 2 minutes by the IMF, and that's where Davian kidnaps Julia. Ethan goes to Shanghai to get a rabbit's foot. That's the thing about this movie. We don't actually ever know what the stakes are other than Julia, the wife. For realsies, not kidding, it's the rabbit's foot, but we don't know what the fuck that is. We never learn what that is. They just kind of make it up like, trust me, this is really high stakes. This is really important. And I'm just like, okay, I'll take your word for it, I guess. There's a cool action stunt here where Ethan has to like pendulum swing from a cable from one building to another, and then he has to parachute out of the building, but the parachute goes like wrong and he crashes into another building. I like it because this is kind of where they start to realize that they can have some fun little comedic moments in these movies, especially based around Ethan, because it is fucking ridiculous what he does. And then the plot gets a little confusing, and I'm just gonna read my notes word for word because, like I said, it's confusing. Ethan brings the rabbit's foot to a guy that works for Davian. Davian kills Julia. It was a fake Julia. Davian leaves. Then the IMF guy, Musgrave, was actually behind it, ? And is working with Davian, ? But also, they don't really seem to be working together, ? And also they kill fake Julia to make sure the rabbit's foot was real, but I don't know how that proves that it was real. They literally have it, so they could just use it to prove that it's real. Nor do I know why Davian is then a mile away in a different building with the real Julia. And I get that Musgrave says that they can't prove it's real without opening it, but that still doesn't explain why killing fake Julia in front of Ethan proves that it's the real rabbit's foot. There's some fuckery going on with this plot that I don't understand at the end. So you fake killed Julia basically just so you could put that at the start of the movie. I don't know what's going on here. In my humble opinion, this last little bit here could have used some script revisions. My problem is not that Musgrave, who is an IMF member, was the actual one working with David instead of Brassel, who was the red herring character. My problem is that I just don't understand the connection between Musgrave and Davian, because Musgrave is still intending to turn on Davian. And then I don't know why they split up and like who ends up getting the rabbit's foot. It's all a very confusing mess, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. To be fair, these scenes are tense. It makes you think that they are going to kill Julia, and then Ethan gets injected with brain rot or whatever timed explosive thing Davian has. It gives us a great Benji sequence. Ethan temporarily dies, and Julia brings him back because she's a nurse or a doctor, I don't remember. But ultimately my confusion did distract from this, and I was like, what's happening? But yeah, ultimately Julia lives and brings Ethan back to life, and then that's a happy ending for now. And yeah, I thought Mission Impossible 3 was pretty good, and I feel like it starts to kind of be where the franchise starts to kind of better understand what they're doing. A next movie!
It was a setup. The Russians are classifying this as an undeclared act of war. The president has initiated Ghost Protocol.
Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, aka Mission Impossible 4. Here we go. I sounded like Porky Pig. And if you point that out in the comments below, I will be sad. I write reviews and stuff for this on Letterboxd. I start with a joke for every movie, and I think I'm funny, so I'm gonna read this to you. They stop nuclear war in this one, so I can't imagine the movies get any more high stakes. Right? The joke, of course, being that they do get more high stakes. Anyway, I think Ghost Protocol is kind of like the form factor Mission Impossible movie. That's not me spoiling the ranking and saying that this is the best one, but I do think that this is where they're kind of like, okay, we fucking nailed the format now. We understand what to do. We know what elements we need to mix in. We've got this. So if you don't know the plot of this movie, it actually starts pretty underwhelmingly. First time viewers are gonna think it's an underwhelming start to the movie. Basically because it supposedly ignores the previous movie's wife plot, and it just tells you that they split up. And you go, wait a second. We're doing this again? But then later on they say that she died, and it's one of those moments that doesn't feel good as you're watching it. You're like, wait, they killed Julia off screen? But then it has an enjoyable payout because it reveals that Ethan's wife Julia is still alive, and that he set up this whole thing to kill her basically because he realized that with her being alive and with him being with her, she would never be safe. So for her own safety, he decided to like split up with her. But also there's like this weird little plot hole in this movie where the whole point of fake killing Julia was so that people would not think that Julia is alive to keep her safe. But Ethan tells people that they split up. So what's the point of telling people that they split up if he wants them to believe that she is dead? It doesn't make a lot of sense. The stakes in this movie, like I said, there's a nuclear missile. I like in this movie that the team actually kind of fails quite often, and they aren't really good at saving the day until like last second, which of course is very spy movie of them. They genuinely fail so many times in this one. It gives me a good feeling because it reminds me that these people are not gods, that they are not perfect. The main disappointment of this movie is the bad guy. He's just very forgettable. I genuinely don't even know what his name is. I don't know if I wrote it down. There's also a new team once again. Benji is back and I love him as always. Jeremy Renner's character is here. He basically is a fun like straight man addition to the group where he kind of is reasonably like, wait, you're gonna do what? There's also a girl named Agent Carter. She is the new member as well. She's pretty decent. She has the same flaws a lot of the Mission Impossible women where she doesn't have a ton of personality. In this movie, she's basically just a femme fatale. Again, I don't hate her, but you know, it is what it is. Luther is still technically in this movie in case you were worried. He's a very small role. He's not like a main guy or anything. The action sequences and stunts are pretty great here. There's a whole thing where they blow up the Kremlin to try and kill Ethan. It doesn't work, but they blow up the Kremlin. There's a part where Benji and Ethan have to like break into the Kremlin to, I don't know, steal something. And they set up like this fake hallway screen projector thing that makes people believe that you're just looking down a normal hallway. And this is what I mean by these movies have to have cool spy stuff in addition to the action. It's just this really fun moment that I'm like, this just really stands out to me in the movie. And I'm just like, no, this is the fun stuff that I need you to have. I need you to have some kind of goofy shenanigans going on. And then this is the one where Ethan climbs the Burj Khalifa. I don't feel like I need to explain that anymore. Ethan climbs the fucking Burj Khalifa from the outside, and it's pretty incredible. And it looks really good. And this is another one of those moments where I like the comedy of it, where they tell Ethan that he has to climb the Burj Khalifa. And I like seeing the humanity in him. This is where he starts to actually get some personality. And he's like, are you sure there's no other way? You're telling me I have to climb the Burj Khalifa. I don't know, that's, well, I mean, like, I'll do it if I have to, but I'm not sure I want to. And then, like, the last action set piece is there's one of those, like, car tower things where people, like, rent or order cars and they get off of this, like, mechanical lift thing and brought down, and there's a whole fight sequence with Ethan and the bad guy here. It's a really fun and unique fight sequence and location to do a fight sequence at. I like that Ethan kind of gets beat up in this place. Like he takes a lot of stumbles and it's just fun to watch. So ultimately, I will say that I found the plot of this one and the villains a little less entertaining than some of the previous installments, but in my opinion, there's a lot that makes up for that. I think the characters are fun. I think the spy and action stuff is great, and there's just some really good stuff that happens in general in this movie. And this is also the movie where I started to notice that they seem to be using the masks less and less in these movies. They tend to like come up with a way to like make it so that it breaks or whatever, so they can't have a mask. Seemingly, what I think happened is that Tom Cruise was like, no, but I'm Tom Cruise and I would like to be the face of this thing. So if we could just like make it so I get to go in as Tom Cruise, as myself, that would be great. So, you know, there's that. The next movie.
Benji.
Ethan, where are you?
The Syndicate is real. A rogue nation trained to do what we do.
An anti-IMF.
Mission Impossible Rogue Nation from 2015. Because, you know, I watch all of these movies in advance. As I was watching them in order, Rogue Nation is the one that I got to where after watching it, I was like, oh, so this is what it means to be a really good Mission Impossible movie. It's very hard for me to describe why it's good. You can see like all of the individual components that make for a good outing, but it's kind of hard for me to explain like how it is that they connect in a way that makes it good. You know what I'm saying? Either way, Rogue Nation is great. And I think part of what makes it good is its introduction of a fantastic villain and a new character for Ethan to go goo-goo bananas for. Also, there's a decent force to combat the IMF. So there's that too. There's a lot of characters, so I'm just going to go over the characters real quick. Returning cast is great. We got Luther, Benji, and Brant. Brant is Jeremy Renner's character, by the way. And each of them have something fun to offer to the film. I especially love Benji in this outing. He sends Ethan into like the main water set piece, and he's just like, yeah, he'll just go like do that thing and like hold his breath for like a century and he'll be fine. And Ethan's kind of in the background like, Benji and Luther and Ethan have this dynamic that is really hard to replicate. To me, Ethan is a very boring character unless he has others to really care about. That's why some of like the earlier movies kind of fall short for me, because Ethan kind of relies on other people. And if those other people aren't interesting or don't really amount to much, then I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. At least with Benji and Luther and as we'll find, Ilsa, then I'm like, oh fuck, this is what Ethan needs. He needs other people. He can't just be on his own. The new cast is great. Ilsa is, I think, like maybe arguably, but I think kind of inarguably the best woman in the franchise. And the main reason I say that is because she has a personality like outside of Ethan Hunt. It's weird because Ethan needs other characters, but the other characters need to be good without Ethan. Generally speaking, I think that Ilsa, especially in this movie, is really good because she has a personality and she does things that aren't dependent or reliant upon Ethan existing. Also, Boss Baby is here. That's what I call him. He's like the CIA guy of this movie, and he's against Ethan and the IMF. When do these movies not make Ethan go against his own government? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very rare that Ethan isn't disavowed or that the IMF isn't disbanded. It just kind of happens every movie, and every time I enjoy it. I like that Ethan and his crew have to work against his own government as well, even though they're trying to help. Like, it's just kind of fun seeing that Ethan has to win over his own government in some way. Solomon Lane is the main villain, and he's a great Mission Impossible villain. I think maybe if you were to pit him against, like, villains in general across all media, you'd probably be like, he's good. Don't get me wrong. But, like, is he the most original or, like, unique villain I've ever seen? No. I do like him, though, because he has, like, this whispery, gravelly voice. And he's kind of a quiet guy, but he has, like, these moments where you really see his, like, anger peek through. And that's when you're like, oh. Like, at one point, he just kind of touches Ilsa's face when he's really angry at her. And he's like, that's really upsetting. It's just really unnerving, and I think it's a great thing to showcase in his character. I think there are a few sections where it could be a little bit more streamlined. Like, I think there are some long stretches in this that could have been, like, shortened or just kind of touched up a little bit, because there are a few moments in this movie where I do find myself getting a little bit bored, which I don't think should happen in a Mission Impossible movie. That's kind of a cardinal sin, I believe. But yeah, Solomon Lane is in charge of a group called the Syndicate. It all works really well for me. The action sequences. There's an opening plane ride thing that's pretty good. Ethan does like a handcuff pole climb that's iconic, and it's a very impressive feat of strength. Make a lot of jokes about Tom Cruise, please, I beg of you. He's a weird fucking guy. But him genuinely being able to like do like the backwards like lift himself off of the pole thing is just like, I'm just like, whoa, dude. There's an opera scene that has some good goofs akin to the car tower from the previous movie. The water dive is kind of the big boy of the movie, and I think it's pretty good. Like, Ethan climbing the Burj Khalifa is a thing that I'm like, that's the Burj Khalifa. He did that kind of for real. This is just like Ethan in like a fake underwater place. And like the underwater stuff is genuinely impressive. The way that he has to hold his breath and just like exert a lot of energy in that time frame. So on like surface level, this doesn't feel as impressive as some of the other ones, but I do think it's genuinely really good. There's a really good car and motorcycle chase. It's really fun at one point when Benji gets to ride passenger with Ethan. The comedy is comedying. It's just fun to see other people react to Ethan doing fucking crazy, insane shit and have to be like, So a couple of like final notes on this movie. I think part of what makes Rogue Nation special is that it does a good job of blending those spy aspects with the action aspects. There's like a really good British Prime Minister scene, and then they do they trap Solomon in like a glass box, and it's really good. I think part of that is what gives these movies the secret sauce, is when there's a really good blending and combination of action and spy. And also I fear that I've gone too long without mentioning like the Ethan Hunt Tom Cruise expression, and I don't know how to describe it, but I imagine you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that look that he gives people. Like, he gives a look to a character, and then he does like an eye raise, like, well, I guess we gotta do this insane shit. To me, like, that expression is Ethan Hunt as a character. So I don't know. I think it's something that I hadn't mentioned before, but I do think is crucial to Ethan as a character, even though it's a tiny little thing. And then I really like the end of this movie where Solomon Lane tries to make Ethan choose between saving Ilsa and Benji. It's a really great scene, like one of my favorites in the franchise, I think. It's this really good thing where like Benji has a bomb strapped to his chest and Ilsa's there, and if Ethan doesn't choose one of them or whatever, doesn't give Solomon like the codes to all the bank accounts, because that's what's happening. He just wants money for the syndicate. And then Ethan just like straight up is like, I've memorized all of the bank account numbers and passwords and whatever. So you need me alive, meaning you need Benji and Ilsa alive. And Solomon Lane gets very angry. He becomes an angry boy. That sets up the whole, ending thing. But it's a very good scene and I love it a whole lot. And I think it's a great display of Ethan Hunt as a character because again, he doesn't always get to be very much of a character. Next movie!
The end you always feared is coming. And the blood will be on your hands.
Now we got Mission Impossible Fallout from 2018. I'm getting tired. There's a lot of these movies. I think a lot of people choose Fallout as their favorite Mission Impossible movie, and I don't fault them for that. I guess we'll see what my thoughts are at the end of this video. I do think Fallout is really good, but I think that there are some moments that don't work as great for me. But the stakes of this movie indicated by the Fallout title, nuclear bombs. But instead of one nuclear missile, we have 2 nuclear bombs. So take that, Ethan Hunt. So I think some of the things that this movie does really well are the facts that it brings back Solomon Lane as the villain, and also that it gives an actually nice, good conclusion to Julia and Ethan's story. This is the most that I've kind of liked Julia, I think. I just never felt that much of a connection with her before, and I really like the humanity that she offers in this movie. And again, part of what makes Solomon Lane in this movie good is that he knows Ethan really well. It's one of those things where the villains tend to be good if they're able to capitalize on Ethan as a person. They know his tendencies, they know his quote unquote detriments, which is that he cares about his friends a whole lot and he will not put the life of one person over thousands of people. I also just like that Solomon is kind of just a petty guy. He sent Ethan on wild goose chases and tortured him for years, not physically, just mentally. And so he's I just fucking hate this Ethan guy, so I'm gonna get back at him, even if it means I'm going to die. Once again, Benji, Luther, and Ilsa are back, and as per usual, I love all of them. Their camaraderie is genuinely special, and I love seeing them just become this really cool group of friends that genuinely care about each other. They will pretty much always help each other. I just think it's really neat and really cool. My main kind of fault here is that I think that while I love their connection and their camaraderie, it feels like this movie kind of weirdly leans a little bit too much into that Hollywood humor. I don't know how to explain it, but the vibes just kind of feel a little off. I can just tell that not everything is how it used to be, and that it's kind of played up a little artificially, if that makes sense. The other characters are good here. Angela Bassett is the head of the CIA now, so I mean, it's Angela Bassett. Come on now. We are good at getting these really good actors to play a role once. I mean, she's returning, but theoretically once. Oh, Boss Baby dies in this one, and the movie really tries to make it emotional and heartfelt. I get that for Ethan, it is genuinely heartbreaking because he is Ethan and that's what he cares about. But as a viewer, as a moviegoer, I'm just here I don't care that much. They also add a character called the White Widow. She's played by Vanessa Kirby. I think that's her name anyway. She's going to be in the Fantastic Four. I think she's really good. She has a lot of fun stuff that she does. She's a villain, but she's kind of like not fully a villain. She's a person that's in it for her own good, and she reminds me of Max from the first movie, but just better. And then there's another main villain, Walker, played by Henry Cavill. I don't know, I just never really enjoyed Henry Cavill as this villain in particular. He has some fun scenes, like the bathroom fight scene where he's still pretending to be a good guy is enjoyable, but it's just like, eh. The movie does this thing where they do kind of like a fake plot twist where they reveal him as being like a two-timer, right? And it's not that it wouldn't be suspicious or isn't suspicious, but I feel like they could have reworked this like twist reveal of him being bad to actually come at a later moment. Maybe it's not a twist for the characters, but for the viewers it is, because it's made very, very obvious to the viewers that he is a bad guy early on. And I would have preferred it if we kind of were revealed this information at a later date, and it kind of shows that, hey, Ethan and the IMF crew are very smart and they knew this. Benji disguises himself as Solomon Lane and they trick him, and it's a good scene. But I wish that was the scene where it's kind of revealed that he is a bad guy. Again, it has some issues of like meandering and slow pacing that kind of isn't perfect all the time. I don't know, it felt like a repeat of previous plot lines, which isn't saying a whole lot because the plots are, generally follow a similar thread. But for some reason, this one felt like it was doing other movies, but like just trying to amplify it a little bit more. And also the spy stuff was sorely lacking in this one. As for the action scenes, we open with like a big skydiving session, and it's cool. It is very cool, but there is like a fake storm that they added in post that doesn't look the best all the time. The bathroom fight scene is really good, like I said. Setting Solomon Lane free is really good. There's the scene where Tom Cruise broke his ankle running across the rooftops, and like, it's cool. But we've seen him run across roofs before. Like, the big one is the helicopter chase, and it's objectively pretty great. Like Ethan climbing helicopter stuff and trying to get control, and then he has to get in the helicopter and then chase down Henry Cavill's character. But there are some moments where Henry Cavill is shooting at Ethan Hunt, and it looks like Star Wars, like when they fire the Star Wars guns, and I'm like, no, it shouldn't look like that. It really brought me out of it. I was like, wow, that is some really fake looking gunfire. The best action scene, in my opinion, is actually like the car chase in this one. There's a really good chase sequence that I think is probably the best that they've ever done in the franchise. And then the movie ends with a cliff fight. It again kind of doesn't look great because you can tell the cliff is like not totally real. And there's like the plane gets hooked, the broken helicopter gets hooked on some stuff, and the effects don't really look good on it. It kind of pulls you out of it once again. But you know what? Tom Cruise fights Henry Cavill, and it really reminded me of the end of Mission Impossible 2. So it was fine. The fight scene was fine. And then Tom Cruise gets to kind of show that he can free climb a little bit again. So, that's a bonus. I do want to say, though, that this is one of the movies that I did originally watch in theaters. I remember it being visually stunning in theaters. Like, the cinematography and the lighting of everything looks really good. So I just wanted to give it, like, that bonus point of saying, hey, this one looks really good. But that's enough for this movie. It's time for the next movie.
This mission of yours is gonna cost you dearly.
All right, we're on the final film as of now because, Final Reckoning is coming out soon. But right now I have to talk about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning from 2023. So this movie does a couple of fun things in like callbacks. It calls back to the original movie in a fun few ways. Kittredge returns, which I really like because I really like Kittredge as a character. And then the movie ends with a train fight action sequence, so there's that as well. And it low-key draws from like Mission Impossible 2 a little. It introduces a female lead that is a thief and not a spy and not an agent that Ethan kind of has to like look after. It does it in a good way. Whereas the first movie or second movie, I didn't really feel did that in a good way. I also want to say that I think this movie has probably the biggest emotional impact out of all of the movies. If you don't want to be spoiled on that, you can skip to the video chapter where I rank the movies. Okay? All right. They kill Ilsa in this one, and this is genuinely, I think, the most I've felt watching one of these movies, because Ilsa is a very good character, played by Rebecca Ferguson. I don't know if I ever mentioned that. And she's just really good, and I really love Ilsa's character, and I love the complicated relationship she has with Ethan. And I think it was a very bold move to fake kill Ilsa in the beginning of the movie and then actually for real kill her in the middle of the movie. The movie opens with like her dying, I think. Once again, Ethan pulling a whole Julia thing and like pretending that she's dead, but she's alive. Rebecca Ferguson's acting in this one really gets to me. There's a scene where they are basically with the White Widow and the new villain, and basically the new villain is making Ethan choose to protect either the new girl or Ilsa. And because he knows Ilsa is capable, and Ilsa knows she is capable, she gets this like look on her face where she knows who Ethan is going to choose, and it is heartbreaking. This one face alone that she gives, where she's kind of like sadly telling Ethan to pick the other girl, is like, I don't know, but it really, really struck me, and I was like, oh... oh shit. The way that she dies is she fights the new villain on a bridge. At the very least, I'm glad that she gets a good on-screen death, in that she has a fun fight sequence. I do think the fight sequence could have been a little bit cooler, but ultimately I'm glad that it was a decent fight sequence that she died in, and not some random like fucking off-screen bullet wound or whatever. The other return characters, like I said, Luther and Benji, they return of course, and they're great. White Widow returns, and I think she's pretty good still. And then Kittredge, like I said. There's a lot of new characters. Grace is the new girl. There's a girl named Paris. The Gabriel is the bad guy. There's an entity called the Entity. There's the cop duo, and then there's Denlinger, and that's a lot, so I'm gonna go over them really quickly. Grace is super fun. I think her acting is really enjoyable. She's not attuned to this world of like spy and like agent mission stuff, so she's a really good person to put next to Ethan Hunt, and there's a lot of funny moments that I genuinely think are hilarious that come from this. Paris is a really cool badass. She's played by the actress that is Mantis in Guardians of the Galaxy. She doesn't really talk much at all, and I actually think that's pretty cool. Her expressions, like her facial acting, are top notch, and she's very skilled, and I like that she turns out to be a good guy, and that she's gonna be returning in Dead Reckoning, or Final Reckoning, sorry. Gabriel. He's an okay villain. I don't care that much about him. I'm curious to see how he actually ends up connecting to Ethan's origins, because they do this like new plot integration where they say that somehow Gabriel was a part of what led to Ethan being Ethan and him joining the IMF or whatever. But in this movie, we don't get much out of it, and it's not that interesting. The Entity is a fun concept. It's evil AI that wants Ethan dead because it knows that Ethan will try to stop it. I think it's intimidating. I think it's genuinely intimidating, and I think it has some great scenes. There's a moment where it impersonates Benji's voice and tells Ethan to go down the wrong path in order to stop him from saving Ilsa. There's a cop duo because the IMF is disbanded. Shocker. And they are very fun to watch. They don't offer a whole lot, but they do have some fun comedic moments. And then Denlinger is the head of defense, like US defense, I think. He's played by the guy who is the doctor in Saw, and I like that he ends up being a pretty bad dude and he wants to use this evil AI. And then unfortunately we have one more character to talk about because I can't go the entire franchise and not like talk about Ethan Hunt as a character. I'm gonna read this word for word. I don't often talk about Ethan as a character because he do the stunt and is usually fairly generic. I like him, but let's be honest, he doesn't have that much personality. I really love his evolution into a guy that refuses to put anyone's life above another. He will save his friends even if it's a detriment to the overall mission. Ultimately, I think it's good this series is hypothetically ending because Tom Cruise has noticeably aged quite a bit. That's like the big noticeable thing in this movie is when you watch Ethan Hunt, aka Tom Cruise, you're like, oh buddy, you're 61. Whoo, you are really not looking like the Ethan Hunt I used to know. There are also some decent spy antics in this one. Ethan breaks into a top secret government meeting, but I am sad that there's like a knockout gas that he uses. And I am sad that that's like the only new spy gear that he really has. Also, I like when Grace is forced to impersonate the Widow. I think that's fun. I like the threat of the Entity, which makes things difficult on every level because it's hard to trust certain things and people and whatever. I think the main joy that I get out of this movie is watching Ethan babysit Grace because again, Grace is not a part of this world. She doesn't know what she's doing. I think if we are going to have to replace Ilsa, I think she's a good inclusion. Okay, action moments. Ethan saves Ilsa in a desert, and it's sweet. The airport scene has some great moments between Grace duping Ethan because she's a thief, and there's a fake nuclear bomb that Benji has to get to. And Luther uses his genius to like dupe the cops. There's a handcuffed car chase. This is with Grace and Ethan being handcuffed to each other, and it's fucking great. There's also some great moments for Paris as a villain in this sequence. There's an alleyway fight between Ethan, Paris, and some other dude. It's a pretty cool fight. I wish we got to see a little bit more of it because it's dark. But then Ilsa dies fighting Gabriel on the bridge. The big one is Ethan motorcycle rides off of a cliff and then like parachutes into the train, and it's pretty cool and I like it. It doesn't look great because the mountain is like CGI that he rides off of. It's noticeably a little off looking, but it's still a fun stunt, and like, you know, he did it for real, so I can't blame him. Also, he crashes into the train and it really reminds me of that stunt from Mission Impossible 3, so that made me chuckle. Ethan fights Gabriel on the roof of the train. It's a fine fight. And then Ethan and Grace escape the falling train as it's like falling into a giant ravine, and it's pretty good. I like that they have to work together, that they have to climb these vertical train cars as they're hanging off a cliff. And then this is the last thing I have to say. They very obviously foreshadow Ilsa's death in this one. And then this movie ends with a voiceover from Kittredge. And it's some really ominous words playing over footage of Benji, and it makes me worried that Benji might die in Final Reckoning. I have a feeling someone is going to die in Final Reckoning. I don't know if it's going to be Ethan, if it's going to be Benji, or if it's going to be Luther. Sorry, I flipped you off on that one. I think any of them is a possibility. It's concerning to me because I like all of them. Anyway, it's time for the final rankings. Coming in at last place or 7th place is Mission Impossible 2. Mission Impossible 2 is, I think, very clearly the worst one in the franchise. It doesn't have a lot going for it. is a lot of stuff that ultimately is meaningless, and I don't really love the characters. The action's kind of mediocre. There's not a whole lot to it, to be honest. And then surprisingly, coming in at 6th place is Mission Impossible 1, the original. Yeah, I don't know, it's just, there are definitely some great moments. The actual like CIA heist is great. The introduction of Luther is really good. But I don't know, Jim Phelps as a villain and like the final action sequence looking and feeling awful kind of just bring it down. And it hasn't quite nailed Ethan Hunt as a character. It hasn't quite nailed what these movies should be yet. I think it's a good movie. Honestly, out of all these movies, 2 is the only one I would recommend you don't watch. I think Mission Impossible, the original, is still good. It's just not as good as they get. And then coming in at 5th place is Mission Impossible 3. The first 3 and the last 3 spots. Yeah, I think 3 is when they start to learn how to make a good Mission Impossible movie in terms of what they kind of should be. Again, it just has some moments that aren't really that special, that important. This one introduces Julia, which is fine, but there's some weird plot stuff that I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, we're doing that. And wait, what's happening? And huh? And the action pieces aren't as crazy and wacko as they get. And this is gonna upset some people, but coming in at 4th place is Mission Impossible Fallout. I do think that this is a good movie. I just kind of think that the others do the Mission Impossible format and characters a little bit better. I don't know, I just enjoy certain aspects of the later movies more. I don't think Fallout is bad. I think it's really good. Like Henry Cavill's character, I'm like, yeah. There's just some moments that I didn't vibe with fully. Coming in at 3rd place, we have Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And that is because I think this is when the franchise fully kind of understands what it needs to be and what it should be. And this is where I think Ethan kind of peaks as a character. This is where you kind of understand Ethan the best and where you kind of start to be like, oh, so this is the type of person that Ethan is, and this is what makes the movies a little bit special, right? I think it's also just done really well. I like the actions a lot, and I like the spy stuff, so here we are. So coming in at 2nd place, we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. That's right. I put that one there. I don't know, even though Tom Cruise is like fucking 61 in this movie and he needs to retire from Mission Impossible at least. Whatever. I really like Grace. I really like the conclusion to Ilsa as a character. And I really like Benji and Luther in this one. And I think it's a really good showcase of Ethan Hunt as a character. I think the action is really good. I think this one might be the funniest for me. I really think this one's good and funny, gives me a good chuckle, and I think it's a good movie. And then coming in at 1st place, it's the only one left, and it's Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Kind of a random one, I feel, to put up here, but I think it does the job of nailing a lot of things, doing a really good job blending the spy and the action, and it introduces some good villains, some good characters, and Ethan is still a really enjoyable one here. Honestly, when I'm looking at this, looking at my top 3 or top 4 of these movies, it was very hard to actually rank them. I think a lot of them could kind of be interchangeable in a way, especially on other people's lists. I would not judge them for it. I'd be like, yeah, that makes total sense. This is my final ranking of the Mission Impossible movies. I want to know what your thoughts. I want to know what your thoughts are on these movies. And leave a little comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you excited for Final Reckoning? Do you think it's actually going to be Tom Cruise's last movie in the Mission Impossible franchise? We'll find out. Anyway, folks, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. I will see you in the next video, but if you'll excuse me, I have some missions I need to take care of. There we go. I can't see.